now know that elections are important for our country. But how do these elections take place? India has more than 133 crores of people. Who elects whom and how? It could be a complete mess with so many people. Exactly. That is why we have a system of elections in India. Elections in India are democratic. We have Lok Sabha elections at the central level through which the MPs, that is the Member of Parliaments, are elected, and we have the Vidhan Sabha election at the state level through which the MLAs, that is the Member of Legislative Assemblies, are elected. There are two categories of elections: general elections, which occur every 5 years, and by-election, which doesn't occur very frequently and happens only to fill a vacancy due to death or resignation of a member. In order to understand the entire system of elections, we will go through 5 simple steps. Step 1. Electoral constituencies. How do we divide the country or state into smaller regions to ensure organized election system? Step 2. Candidates nomination from these constituencies. Step 3. Election campaign. How do these candidates communicate with the common people of the country? Step 4. Voters list. Who is eligible to vote and who is not? Step 5 and the last one, polling and counting of votes. So let's get started with step 1, that is electoral constituencies. In order to ensure an organized system of elections, the country or state is divided into constituencies. The bigger question is, how do we divide the country or state into constituencies? Let us take the example of Karnataka. The entire state of Karnataka has a total area of 191,976 km square. Now let us assume that we divide Karnataka into constituencies such that each constituency has equal area. We are just assuming this. And what do we find? We end up with an area 1 which has a heavy population of about 1 lakh people, whereas an area 2 which has a very small population of merely 100 people living within it. As a result, the leader elected in area 1 is because of 1 lakh votes, whereas the leader elected in area 2 is because of just 100 votes. Now this is not a fair deal. Now election is all about voting. So what is more important is the population living within a constituency rather than the area of the constituency. Therefore, the country or the states are divided into constituencies such that each constituency has roughly equal population living within it. In Lok Sabha elections, the country is divided into constituencies such that each constituency has roughly equal population. The elected representative from each constituency becomes a member of parliament, that is MP. Now there are a total of 543 constituencies in India. So in Lok Sabha, we have a total of 545 seats, out of which 530 seats come from the constituencies within states, seats come from the constituencies within the union territories, and 2 seats are directly nominated by the President of India. Each state is given a fixed number of seats in the Lok Sabha such that the ratio of the number of seats to the total population of that state remains the same for all the states in India. Now this is very important. So I'll repeat it once again. Each state is allotted a fixed number of seats in Lok Sabha such that the ratio of the number of seats to the population of that state remains same for all the states in India. However, this rule doesn't apply to the states which have a population lesser than 60 lakhs. So we will understand this rule with an example. Let us consider 2 states, Karnataka and Haryana. So Karnataka has a total population of 6.5 crores. Haryana has a total population of 2.5 crores. The number of constituencies in Karnataka is 28. That is, there are 20 seats in Lok Sabha for Karnataka. And the number of constituencies in Haryana is 10. So if we look at the ratio in these 2 states, we see that the population per constituency is same for both the states, which is approximately 23 to 25 lakhs, right? So this rule has to hold true. That means the population per constituency must be the same across all states in India. But as I said, that this rule doesn't apply to states with smaller population. Now let us take an example of a state with lesser population. Let's talk about, say, Himachal Pradesh. So it has a total population of around 70 lakhs and the total number of constituencies for Himachal Pradesh is 4. So here the population per constituency comes out to be 17 lakh, which is quite lesser than the standard value. Goa, which has a total population of just 20 lakhs. So there we have 2 constituencies. That means the population per constituency in Goa is 10 lakhs. So with these examples, what we understand is the main idea is that in Lok Sabha election, India is divided into constituencies, keeping in mind one thing, that the population per constituency must be the same. However, there are exceptions to these rules only for those states which have population lesser than 60 lakhs. In a similar way, in assembly elections, each state is divided into constituencies such that the ratio of the population of the constituencies to the number of seats allocated is same throughout the state. Now, each representative elected from each constituency becomes an MLA, that is Member of Legislative Assembly. So, in Karnataka, there are a total of 224 constituencies. So, if we talk about the Karnataka Vidhan Sabha, there are a total of 224 seats are from these constituencies and 1 seat is directly nominated by the Governor of Karnataka. An important point to note here is that while we were talking about the Lok Sabha elections, we mentioned that Karnataka had 28 constituencies. Now that we are talking about the Vidhan Sabha elections or assembly elections, we say that Karnataka has 224 constituencies. Now we need to understand that in 2 of these cases, we are talking about 2 different levels. In Lok Sabha election, we are at the center level. We mean that at the center, that means in Lok Sabha, there are 28 seats for Karnataka. When we are talking at the state level, we mean that in Karnataka Vidhan Sabha, there are 224 seats for Karnataka. So you need to understand that we are talking at 2 different levels. Therefore, the number of constituencies within Karnataka is varying. Now, we often hear people telling that, this party won 30 seats, that party won 100 seats. What do we actually mean by that? In fact, if you remember, in 2018 Karnataka Assembly elections, BJP had won 104 seats, Congress had won 80 seats. What does that mean? That actually means that the candidates of BJP had won in 104 constituencies out of the total 224 constituencies in Karnataka. In order to ensure that the weaker sections of the society are not deprived of participation in elections, there are reservations for the weaker sections. In Lok Sabha, out of the total 545 seats, 131 seats are reserved, 84 for SC and 47 for ST. Now, if we look at the total population of India, we see that SC comprises of 16.6% and ST comprises of 8.6% of the total population of India. So, reservations exist for the lower sections at similar percentages at the center level, state level, municipality level as well as the panchayat level. Now the question is, who can nominate himself or herself as a candidate? Well, anyone can do so, just that he or she should be above 25 years of age. There is no minimum educational qualification required. Now you may ask why? Why is there no minimum educational qualification? Now, India is a country where a majority of our population is not qualified enough. So, if we put a bar on minimum educational qualification, that would actually deprive a good chunk of our population from participating in election. Besides that, as we had learned in our previous video, in a democracy, the leader is the choice of the people. So here we cannot give power to someone just with better educational qualification or wealth or age or anything. It has to be people's choice. So if the people living in India really think that they want to give more weightage to educational qualification, they can do so by voting for the person who has better educational qualification. So it is basically left up to the people to decide that how much weightage do they want to give to educational qualification for their representatives. Now, what does a candidate do when he or she wants to nominate himself or herself? The candidate fills the nomination form, gives some money as deposit, gives a legal declaration as in his educational qualification, no criminal records, assets and liabilities. Now all these details given as part of the legal declaration is just to help the voters understand the candidate better so that they can decide if they want to vote for the candidate or not. Let us first answer the question, who can vote? So quickly look at the criteria for voting. Any citizen of the country above 18 years of age can vote, irrespective of whether he is educated, uneducated, rich, poor, kind, cruel. Everybody above 18 years can vote. Candidates who have criminal records or with unsound mind may be denied to vote, but that happens very rarely. Now, the list of eligible voters is prepared long before the elections actually take place, and this list is called voters list or electoral roll. It is also important that the voters list is revised every 5 years because elections take place every 5 years. And what are the things that needs to be incorporated during the revision of this voters list? First of all those citizens who are attaining 18 years of age should be included in the list. All those who are dead should be deleted from the list. All those who have moved out of the place should also be deleted from the list. On the election day, only those citizens whose names are there on the voters list will be allowed to cast their vote. That too, they will have to carry an identity card of themselves. Before 2 weeks of the final election, the final list of the candidates is announced. So for approximately this 2-week period, election campaign runs. Now what exactly happens in an election campaign? The candidate gets to directly communicate with the voters. The political leaders attend the election meetings wherein their main idea is to attract public on sensitive issues and make it big. In fact, there are political parties who prepare for months before elections actually happen. In fact, if you take the example of Mamata Banerjee, who is currently the Chief Minister of West Bengal, rose to prominence after she opposed the land acquisition in Singur, West Bengal for industrialization at the cost of the farmers. In 2011, she pulled off a landslide victory in West Bengal Assembly elections. In fact, she was able to defeat the 34-year-old Communist Party of India in West Bengal. Many a times political parties use slogans before elections which make them really popular. For example, Modified India by BJP before Lok Sabha elections 2014, Bhrashtachar Mukt Bharat by Aam Aadmi Party, or Garibi Hatao by Congress during 1971 elections under Indira Gandhi. So we see that most of these political parties make use of slogans, make use of the election campaigns at its best to attract public attention. Few do's and don'ts in an election campaign. Do conduct the campaigns the way you want. Do not bribe, do not threaten voters, do not influence voters on the basis of caste or religion, do not use government resources, especially vehicles or officials, for election campaigns. Do not spend more than 25 lakh for a Lok Sabha election campaign and not more than rupees 10 lakh for an assembly election campaign. Do not take any big policy decision after election announcement. Do not lay foundation stone of any big project after election announcement. The constituencies are set. Candidates have nominated. In fact, the final list of candidates is also rolled out. Voters list is ready. Now arrives the big day, the election day. So voters whose names are there on the voting list, they visit the nearest polling booth. Now please note that there are many polling booths within a constituency, but every voter need to visit the nearest polling booth where their name is listed. It is also important that every voter carries an identity card which helps the election officials identify him or her. So inside the polling booth, there is an official to identify the voter, put a mark on the finger, allow them to cast vote. Then there are electronic voting machines called EVMs to record the votes. All that a voter needs to do is press the button against the name of the candidate for whom he or she wants to vote. We have given our vote and expressed our choice, but how do we know that who wins and how? So all the sealed EVMs from a constituencies are brought to a secure place, opened, and the number of votes casted for each candidate is counted. Obviously, the one with the maximum number of votes wins. In a country like India, election tie happens very rarely. However, if at all election tie happens, the winner is decided by lottery method. A very important point to remember is that the counting of votes takes place on the same day around the same time at all the constituencies in a general election. And this is how we decide who wins an election. I hope you found this video useful on how elections take place in India. In the next video, that is part 3, we will talk about who controls the entire election process. How do we ensure that our elections take place in a free and fair way? So see you all in part 3.